Hi, everybody. I'm Rianne Crosby, and this channel is all about Rianne Crosby teaching English. So, in this video, we're going to talk about the poem which we call in Trinidad and Tobago Ol Higue, but which is called Ol Higue in Guyana and other parts of the Caribbean. This is a poem by Mark McWatt, and this is studied by students who are doing English B, English Language Arts in Form 3. English literature students for sure, those of you who are writing examinations in 2026, 2027, and January 2028 for certain. So let's dive in. So this poem is about a folklore character known as the Sukuya in Trinidad, known as the Hag in Jamaica, known as Ol Higue in other parts of the Caribbean. And one of the things we know is that this title is not a standard English title per se. And that tells us that this character is West Indian, that she is native to the Caribbean, and that there are several features of her story and her connection to Caribbean communities, which are unique in terms of her identity and our identity as people. This poem says quite a few things, and we're going to unpack some of the layers in this video. So let's dive in. You think I like this stupidness, gallivanting all night without skin, burning myself out like cane fire to frighten the foolish? And for what? A few drops of baby blood? You think I wouldn't rather take my blood seasoned in fat black pudding like everyone else? And don't even talk about the pain of salt and having to bend these old bones down to count 1,000 grains of rice. If only babies didn't smell so nice, and if I could only stop hearing the soft, soft call of that pure blood running in new veins, singing the sweet song of life, tempting an old dry-up woman who'd been holding her final note for years and years, afraid of the dying hum. Then again, if I didn't fly and come to that fresh pulse in the middle of the night, how would you, mother, name your ancient dread? And who to blame for the murder inside your head? Believe me, as long as it have women giving birth, a poor Ol Higue like me can never dead. Of course, I'm pronouncing it Ol Higue, as the Trini that I am. Who is the speaker in this poem? This is one of the key elements of poetry that we must unpack whenever we study a poem. We must figure out, apart from who has written the poem, who is speaking in this poem? Well, the speaker in this poem is the Sukuya character in Trinidad and Tobago. By day, she's an old woman who is a recluse in her village. She doesn't have too many interactions. She doesn't have too many friends. And in fact, people shun her. Maybe because of what happens at night. Because at night, the Sukuya is the one who turns into a ball of fire, flies around her village, and sucks babies' blood. Why babies? Why does she do this? Is this something that she enjoys doing? And based on stanza 1, we can come to some conclusions. But more than that, where is this poem set? Is this poem set in a city center? Can you find the Ol Higue strolling around the mall or walking all over the beach on a sunny day? Or is this poem set in a very dark, spooky, rural, bushy area? I think you think the latter is true, yes? So the Ol Higue, the Sukuya, the Ol Higue, the Hag is a character who is a little bit confused. She's a little bit complex. And stanza 1 is where we're going to start to do our analysis, our literary analysis of devices as well as sensory imagery and what message may be communicated in this poem. So let's go. We're going to take it stanza by stanza. You think I like this stupidness? Gallivanting all night without skin? Burning myself out like cane fire to frighten the foolish? And for what? So, based on the way that she's saying what her task is every night, she's without skin. She's burning herself out like cane fire. The people that she frightens are foolish. And she's wondering, is it worth all the trouble? She says, you don't think I would rather take my blood seasoned in fat black pudding like everyone else? And don't even talk about a pain of salt and having to bend these old bones down to count 1,000 grains of rice. There are lots of myth and a lot of different references and allusions to popular West Indian traditions in this stanza. So what we can tell is that her tone is disgusted. She is critical, she is moody, and she's definitely sarcastic, because the mood in which we are left, I'm left a little bit intrigued. I'm wondering, how could this character, who is so disliked, how could she be so brave as to say, I don't even like this thing that I have been cursed into is not something that I want to do. And so if the person is doing something nightly, routinely, consistently for a long time, I've been hearing about the Sukuya from ever since. I've been hearing about this character who's called the Ol Higue in this poem for a long time, then it leaves us a little curious. And I'm surprised to know that she doesn't even want to do something that she consistently and repeatedly does. So it leaves us to wonder, then why does she do it? How does this become a part of her identity? How does somebody do something that they don't even enjoy doing? What role do they play in our communities? So in stanza 1, the literary devices that we can explore are simile, rhetorical questions, and alliteration. And I'll show you some examples of these now. One of the significant similes in stanza 1 is that line that says, burning myself out like cane fire. Now, as you know or may not know, in the Caribbean, one of our predominant exports during the time of colonialism and in early independence days, and even in some islands it's still widely produced, is sugarcane. Now, when a sugarcane field is burned for clearing, what happens is that the sugarcane field burns extremely quickly. Number one, because it's very dry, the grass and the foliage is very, very dry. But it is also a very significant fire because it's hard to miss. Sugarcane burns very brightly so that it captures the eye, especially if it's dark at night. And also, the smell emitted from sugarcane fields burning is quite pungent. It's a very distinctive smell. So if she's associating herself with the smell and the look of burning cane fields, then it means that she's probably burning quite brightly as her firebolt streaks across the sky. It probably also means that there's a little bit of a scent, and we know that she is dry because she's a very old woman. So she's burning herself out. This is a quick expedition at night. It's hard to miss a ball of fire streaking across a dark night sky. And of course, maybe there's also the smell, as I said before. In this stanza, this character, the Ol Higue, asks several rhetorical questions. Now, you may not know, but those of you who are in my class would remember, rhetorical questions are not asked because we don't know the answers. A rhetorical question like, you think I like this stupidness, is not intended to get you to say, yes or no. These questions show her attitude. They show a little bit of her sass, a little bit of spunk. And it shows us that she seems drained by the entire ordeal. She's complaining constantly about this task. And the question she's asking is, do you think that these little drops of baby blood, because you can't get that much blood from a baby, do you think these drops of baby blood are worth the stress? Is it worth the hassle? Wouldn't it just be easier to bite an adult and get far more blood? And so the alliteration of the words frighten the foolish and baby's blood show us the repetition of consonant sounds at the beginning of words, especially words that are close together. So alliteration, it's not really the consonant letters, but it's the consonant sound that creates a little bit of a rhythmic effect. Frighten the foolish and baby's blood. And so in stanza 1, the sensory imagery now that Mark McWatt uses to bring the poem to life would be the words and phrases that are used that appeal to our senses. And we have 5 natural senses. We have the sense of sight, which alludes to sensory imagery of visual imagery. We have the sense of hearing, which is auditory imagery. We have the sense of taste, which is, do you remember? Gustatory imagery. We have the sense of touch, which is tactile imagery, and we have the sense of hearing, which is auditory imagery. So in this very first stanza, Mark McWatt's language, the poet's language, appeals to three of our senses. We have our visual imagery, where the poet uses the words and the persona says, I'm burning myself out like cane fire. So there's both visual imagery as well as a simile overlaid there. So maybe you can think of a slice of double-layered cake or triple-layered cake or several layers of cake, where it's one slice of cake, but there are several layers that make up the slice. And then we have the tactile imagery of the pain of salt and bending the old bones, and then the gustatory imagery of the salt, but also the seasoning, the seasoned in fat black pudding, the blood is seasoned in fat black pudding. I want to focus a little bit on this pain of salt and bending the bones. The thing about it is, the legend has it that if you want to keep the Ol Higue out of your home, you are going to have to sprinkle a little bit of rice, sprinkle some rice grains at the front door or the entry points, the windows. And the Ol Higue has to stop and pick up every single one of those rice grains. Now imagine that she has to pick up hundreds or thousands of grains. If she drops any of the grains, she's going to have to start from one. And the longer it takes her to continue or complete this task, the later it gets in the night. And of course, the morning begins to advance. And the next thing we know, the sun is coming up. And so the idea is that, if you want to keep the Ol Higue out, you have to keep her busy by keeping her counting these grains of rice. In terms of the pain of salt, many of you may know that sometimes salt is used to rub into the skin of the old woman who has shed her skin. This is a very, very grotesque poem. It's a very grotesque concept in Caribbean folklore. This woman is said to shed her skin nightly and then transform into a ball of fire. Now, if you know where she lives, because she lives in the village, and you get into her house while she's on her nighttime flying escapades as this ball of fire, and you get into that house and you rub some salt into that skin, the next day you're going to hear an old woman shrieking. That's how you know she's a Sukuya. Well, this lady has a very painful legacy, right? It's a very, very painful legacy of burning, pain of salt, burning, bending old bones, etc. Let's go into stanza 2. So in stanza 1, we are introduced to this character who says, I don't even like this. And the people who get scared of me, they're foolish. So then why does she do it? Well, stanza 2 tries to answer that question. And the tone, notice her language shifts a little bit. See if you can pick up where there's a little bit of shift in the tone between, you think I like this stupidness, gallivanting all night without, and how she presents the challenge that she has. On one hand, she wants to do this thing, but on the other hand, she says, if only babies didn't smell so nice. And if I could only stop hearing that soft, soft call of that pure blood running in new veins, singing the sweet song of life, tempting an old, dry-up woman who'd been holding her final note for years and years, afraid of the dying hum. In the second stanza, there's a shift in tone, as I said before. It's at that line where she says, if only babies didn't smell so nice. And as you know, babies smell really nice. Part of the reason is because we bathe them in these nice soft fragrances, and we powder them up, and they have on their little lotion, and they have little clothes. The Ol Higue is confessing that she can't refuse the tempting, delicious smell of babies. That's part of the reason why she cannot help but go to people's homes at night. And so that shift in tone affects our mood. We begin to, rather than feel surprised and curious, we begin to understand how someone can do something that they don't necessarily feel proud of. But they do it anyway, because to some extent, this is something that they have embraced as part of their identity. And identity is one of the significant themes in this poem. The Ol Higue, this character, struggles to be understood in her community. And she struggles, as I said before, to be accepted because she is a rejected person in her community. And so the sensory imagery in stanza 2 The olfactory imagery, the sense of smell, is appealed to through the words, "If only babies didn't smell so nice." And the auditory imagery, the words we can hear, the soft, soft call, as in she's passing. Imagine this woman is walking through her village during the daytime and she can hear the babies crying in the houses. She can hear their blood running in their veins. And she's attracted to them because their blood is pure. She needs pure blood. She doesn't want the blood of some 75-year-old, 50-year-old, 60-year-old. She's not interested in people who are smoking, drinking, doing nonsense during the day and in the evening with their bodies. She wants pure blood running in new veins, singing the sweet song of life. Babies are born and there's a lot of expectation about who they could be, and there's a lot of innocence and there's a lot of excitement. That's what she wants to tap into, because she is afraid of the dying hum. And when I thought about hum, I thought about, that flat line that shows up when people die, that initially the monitor might be going up and down with your heartbeat, but when you die, it's a flat hum, And so in stanza 2, we encounter a few more literary devices. We have our metaphor, onomatopoeia, personification, and alliteration. Pause the video, see if you can go through stanza 2 and identify each of these 4 devices. All right, so alliteration, again, the repetition of consonant sounds. So we have smell so nice, that soft C sound. We have soft, soft call, and singing the sweet song of life. These, the repetition of this S sound is also called sibilance. And what it does is it has a very soothing effect. It's like the sound of a mother's voice when singing a lullaby and hushing a baby to sleep. The sound of the S is not very jarring on the ear. It's not very harsh. It's very, very soft, very soothing, almost like a lullaby. And then we have our metaphors. I'm going to have to show you the metaphors on another. Let me bring back the metaphors here. Let's look at that sweet song of life and that line where they say holding her final note. Her final note, of course, would be her dying hum, and the way in which she may not be able to go on. But the thing about this legend is it doesn't seem like if this legend is going to die at all. The thing about folklore characters is that they seem to live on and on and on. I don't know when Papa Bo and Laja Bless and Duens and Sukuyas were born, but they certainly have no expiry date. In terms of onomatopoeia are those words which represent a sound when spoken. So the word hum represents the sound hum, yes? And so let's go into stanza 3. The final stanza is where there's a shift in role. In the beginning of this poem, the Ol Higue is asking rhetorical questions. But in stanza 3, she says, "Then again, if I didn't fly and come to that fresh pulse in the middle of the night, how would you, mother, name your ancient dread? And who to blame for the murder inside your head? Believe me, as long as it have women giving birth, a Ol Higue like me can never dead." And in stanza 3, Mark McWatt shows us a final shift in tone with those words, "then again." And that suggests a little bit of acceptance of her role, a little acceptance of her identity as, what, people don't like me? Too bad. This is who I am. This is how I am. This is how I'm going to be in this community. No problem. I will take the blame. It could mean that the Ol Higue has stepped back and reconciled with her role, reconsidered, what? Everybody wants to blame me for something that they need to take responsibility for. So let's unpack and see what that might be. She says she's no longer asking rhetorical questions. She's now asking the mothers, who to blame for the murder inside your head? Why would women have murder inside their heads? I think I might have talked to some of my students about this. The thing is, when a woman has a baby, there are a lot of biological and psychological changes that happen within her. And some of those changes leave her a little bit less sprightly, less energetic, less positive than she would have been before she had the baby. Yes? And some of you may be familiar with the concept of postpartum depression. Maybe what this poem is suggesting is that women should not be left alone and should be surrounded, need a support system. Because sometimes the challenges of taking care of the baby can present a tall order for some. And so when the poem says, what is the ancient dread, or who to blame for the ancient dread, there's a metaphor in there. When you see the word ancient and the word dread, those words mean old and terror. A dread is something that is terrifying. And then the question is, who to blame for the murder inside your head? You know, if you are struggling financially, struggling emotionally, struggling physically because you've just had a baby, and that baby is crying incessantly, if you don't have the tools to deal with it, you can crack under pressure. And so the Ol Higue is saying, as long as it have women giving birth, a poor Ol Higue like me can never dead. Because she has accepted her identity. She is saying, I know my role in this community. My role is for when women get to the point or the brink, the point of no return, and they struggle and they struggle and they struggle. They're going to need somebody to blame whatever they may have done to their precious babies. Because remember, the ancient dread of mothers is the death of their babies. Even now, for students, my students as old as you are, the dread of your parents is that they will have to bury you. That's not something that any parent wants. And so what she's saying is, fine, you all want to blame me for what has happened to babies? I will take the blame. And there's a word for that. If you know the word that I'm referring to, comment down below. This video is my recap, my lesson on Ol Higue by Mark McWatt. I am Rianne Crosby and I teach English. Please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe, share with a friend, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.